And welcome back. This is part 3 of 3, Living on Purpose, part 13. Well, the third thing that we notice regarding making a move in the right direction is having a mindset to move towards what is required. It is interesting to note that the brothers made it a point now to reveal the apparent mistake that was made when their money was found in their sacks. And they came with all the money back and more money to pay for more grain. Here we see something in the brothers that we may not have seen and that they've not always done before. They were being honest and forthcoming. They admitted to something they did not earn and should not have been given back to them. The principle is clear. Living on purpose is a time to move in the right direction in order to gain trust and show that my actions are honorable. Living on purpose is a time to move in the right direction in order to gain trust and show that my actions are honorable. There's a third thing that is necessary to live on purpose, and that is this number 3. A time to discover what God has in mind. We notice in verse 23 that the servant of Joseph told them something that should have struck their hearts and minds. It should have been a clue, but for some reason it didn't register to them, because the servant said to the brothers, don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. Say they went to the servant and said, hey, listen, just want you to know that this money was back in our sacks, and we don't know, how it got there, but we want you to know that we brought it all back. And after they had shared that with Joseph's servant told them something. I don't think it didn't really strike home to them when he said, your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I mean, who told this Egyptian servant about their God? How did he know this? Well, there are 3 concluding things that we find that caused the brothers to move in the direction that God wanted them to move in. And here they are. First, we find the providence of God. What Joseph's servant told the brothers was, in fact, the providence of God at work, and the brothers didn't even realize it. So what exactly is the providence of God anyway? The providence of God is God providing for us what we need when it is needed. It is all a matter of distinguishing the difference between needs as compared to wants. Sometimes what we want is not really what we need. And oftentimes, God has to help us see the real need when we refuse to look at it because of our insistence to meet our agenda or our way of thinking. There's a second thing that we find, not only the providence of God, but the unfolding plan of God. In verse 29, Joseph was moved with emotion when he took a moment to look at his brother Benjamin, whom, by the way, he hadn't seen in 20 years. He had to excuse himself for a time to recompose himself with tears of joy and emotion in seeing his brother Benjamin as he wept in a private room. And God was unfolding before his eyes what he could hardly believe. He saw for the first time in 20 years his brother Benjamin. Now, some of you listening today might be going through God's unfolding plan, which may be difficult, may even be unfair and unjust. And you don't realize, or you may not realize, that it is God trying to get your attention so that you might recognize He loves you and has a plan for your life. There's a third thing we understand, and that is this: the undeserved blessing of God. In verses 32 to 34, the brothers were seated in their birth order from the firstborn to the youngest, which seemed pretty amazing to Joseph's older brothers, and yet they still didn't get it. And part of the reason may have been because they were not seeking the God of their heritage. They were still focused on themselves. But God had other plans, and God was blessing them even though they did not deserve it. And it was so obvious as well. The youngest son, Benjamin, was being blessed. In fact, he was given five times the portion of food that the rest of them got. The truth is, God desires to bless us even though all of us are undeserved of his mercy, of his grace, and of his love. The principle is clear. Living on purpose is a time to discover what God has in mind in order to bring us to a place where his purpose meets our needs. Living on purpose is a time to discover what God has in mind in order to bring us to a place where his purpose meets our needs. This was a turning point in the life of Joseph and his brothers. And I want to close by just reading the last portion of the chapter because it was so significant. Let me repeat again what we just mentioned. And they sat before him, verse 33, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men marveled at one another. And he took and sent messes, that is, portions, unto them before him. But Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. It was a time that was beyond comprehension. The brothers still didn't exactly know what was taking place. Joseph could hardly contain himself. It was fellowship. It was family time. It was a time that he hadn't had for so many years. And here they were all together. The only ones that were missing was Jacob. But all the brothers were there, including Simeon, which, as you see in the beginning of the chapter, the servant brought Simeon out and they sat together and enjoyed a meal with Joseph. Well, we find that as we look at what it means to live on purpose, it all has to do with having a genuine relationship with God. And Joseph had that relationship. Unfortunately, his brothers did not, but soon that would change as we look at the next chapter of Joseph revealing to them who he is, and then something that was wonderful that would take place, a reunion that brought both fear and joy to their hearts. Well, may God richly bless you. I trust that you will be encouraged by what God's word has said, and I trust that you will continue to spend time in the word, spend time praying for one another as we look forward to seeing you soon. God bless you all.